Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Rishi Chowdhury. He's the co-founder at Incubus Ventures. Rishi, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think you guys have like kind of an interesting concept with, or at least how it started. But maybe before we kind of get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up actually in a place called Warfield, just outside of London. It's probably about an hour outside of London. Very much to kind of family where my parents have been in sort of long, in jobs for a long time, sort of for my whole life essentially. And so that was kind of the career that I was going to follow. Kind of left school, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Got to university where I did a business degree.
Okay. What made you
Sorry?
want to take business in school?
Well, I think it was partly because I originally wanted to be an architect, and I didn't quite do that well in the studies. So on the academical side of things, I was always wanted to be more practical, and that's not really how our school worked. It was all about the kind of theory and the kind of reading books and doing tests based off that. So I wasn't, that wasn't my strong point. And business, I kind of seemed to naturally have a flair for, and kind of, did the usual kind of buying and selling stuff at school when I was younger as well. So I decided to keep that going and carry on down that path and see where it led me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you graduated university. Kind of walk me through your career before you decided to kind of co-found Incubus.
Sure. So I went to Kingston University to do my business degree. And while at university, again, I very much found the going to lectures was mind-numbingly boring. And
Sure.
I basically sit there and wonder why I'm listening to someone read me a book from the 70s.
Sure.
So it didn't engage me, and soon after, I kind of as a way to kind of help myself get through paying, for university tuition and accommodation and stuff like this, I started a business which was around sort of buying and selling trainers, and that evolved purely from buying at the local market and selling it in university campus, where students were too lazy to go down to the market.
Sure.
And essentially that kind of evolved into where I was creating custom trainers for university students across the UK.
Interesting.
That happened quite quickly, actually. So within the 9 months, we had gone from sort of just a few trainers here and there from the market, selling them at university, to actually ordering them from a manufacturer. We had one in China and one in Italy, and then selling that on a much larger scale across different campuses in the UK. And actually bumped into someone from my university as well, who ended up buying the business after sort of 9-10 months.
Okay.
So that was a nice kind of win to start off with, and really kind of reinvigorated my kind of love for business and that kind of side of things. So I failed my first year because I never went to lectures. I was doing this business instead.
Okay.
And so in the second year, I had to retake one of the modules, and I had a lot more time on my hands. So again, I reinvested the money into another business, this time with my housemate at the time.
Okay.
And at that point, we did a student travel company. So taking students, sort of maybe 50 to 100 at a time, to a mansion somewhere in the UK, out in the countryside. Nice big house with swimming pool, and we could have a great party in over the weekend. And that was the premise for it. It got a lot of kind of early traction, but we had problems with getting money from students and making sure they paid on time.
Sure.
We also had problems with the fact that we didn't own any of the properties. So typically with student parties, they're not the most, I'd say, friendly on a house.
Sure.
And, so we didn't often get invited back for a second time.
I got you.
There was only a limited number of places we could go to, let's say. So a lot needed working on, but we kind of ran out of cash before we really got a chance to get it going. So that was again about sort of 9 months or so.
Okay, interesting.
But that got my kind of interest in the whole startup world. And when I left university, I joined a startup called Huddle, which was sort of maybe about 15 people at that time.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years. I managed to see them grow from a small business with a freemium business model to growing into something which was about 160, 170 people when I left.
Wow.
And it raised sort of $40 million. The culture had changed, the processes had changed, and there was a lot of stuff that I learned from that kind of process, and seeing how they changed to a scalable business model as well and targeted larger enterprise clients. All of that was kind of the foundation for Incubus, and that's when we decided, myself and George, who was a colleague at Huddle, that we wanted to get back into the entrepreneurial world and start our own business, and we could use a lot of what we learned and the contacts we had made during those years, at Huddle.
Sure. So what is Incubus, and kind of why did you guys decide to co-found this together?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Incubus essentially connects startups with commercial deals at large enterprises. So we help companies over sort of a 3-month period.
Okay.
With workshops and masterclasses, which come from sort of industry leaders or founders who've been there and done it before in terms of scaling a business, or other kind of industry kind of experts. And so they come and they help from everything from, how to build, lead generation, how to go through the whole process of procurement at a large enterprise, which is often very different from selling to small and medium-sized enterprises.
Sure.
And how to, keep your cash flow, going as well during that sort of longer sales cycle. So it helps with everything on that kind of side of things. And then the main kind of benefit is really the introductions that we do. So we very much focus on running events and sessions with mentors where we can engage the startups with key decision makers and gatekeepers and influencers within large enterprises that we work closely with.
Sure.
So it gives them an opportunity not only to learn the internal processes of those companies, but also they're very much looking for new technologies that can help with, creating efficiencies for the company or helping improve the customer journey. And those companies can plug those gaps and essentially say they're working on commercial pilots as well with these kind of large enterprises. So it really is meant to help take them from trundling along and selling into small, medium-sized enterprise companies, and ensuring that they can then go on and sell into large enterprises and continue to do that once they've left the program.
Sure. Okay. No, and I want to cover the program and kind of dive deeper into a little bit. But when we originally talked, you mentioned like you guys actually started off with like a bus. So do you want to kind of walk the listener through kind of the early stages and kind of the reason and the story behind kind of getting a bus and starting this whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we began, let's say maybe before we left Huddle, we used to, myself and George used to run a number of events and startup scenes.
Okay.
And so the events that we ran were very much focused around helping early stage entrepreneurs with, the basics. So, a lot of companies fail in the first year, it's well known. And a lot of these kind of reasons why they fail are actually super simple stuff once you've been there and done it before. It's often overlooked, when you're running your first business. And so essentially we wanted to come in and help those companies which were just starting, help them through a 3-month program which can guide them on, how to get started, how to get a product into the market, how to get your early customers, your early bit of traction. And that's where we decided that we should do this full-time as something opposed to, over events. And we left our jobs and decided that actually we'd like to do something a bit different. And doing something a bit different was buying a bus.
Sure.
The original idea was that we'd travel around and be able to showcase the startups at different events. We'd be able to have them meet investors from around the country, meet clients from around the country, that kind of thing. So we bought the bus. We raised a bit of money via crowdfunding on a platform called Seeders.
Okay.
And we renovated the bus. We stripped out the interior, and we put in desks which wrapped around the top. There was some meeting rooms as well downstairs.
Okay.
And sort of like a kitchen/breakout space. That served as our home for about the first 6 months of the business, and we sat on there during the sort of the late summer when it was really hot, and then during the start of winter when it became really cold. And we kind of felt the seasons very, very closely on the bus.
Sure, I can imagine.
So those first 6 months were really interesting, but it gave us an opportunity to learn at how we can best use it. It was great in terms of marketing, in terms of getting our business out there and people knowing what we're doing and that kind of thing. So that was a really good experience and, helped our business massively in the early days. And the bus also helped with cash flow. So in terms of, we could hire the bus out to take it to events and have startups showcase at those events. And so all of that kind of helped us as we developed and learned and figured out what the best type of program to offer was. So we then moved into proper offices. The bus kind of continued in its role as doing events.
Sure.
But it no longer hosted startups on the bus. But to this day, it still carries on doing events for corporates, for startups, for investors, for a whole range of kind of activities throughout this kind of a startup's career. So, and we kind of moved into the offices. We obviously grew the number of people and the size of the programs. As we learned more about the market and what startup challenges were and how we could best help through our network and our experience and our mentors' experience, which led to kind of the program as it is now, which I mentioned before.
Sure. So, no, I think that's awesome, and I love how you guys kind of did the whole bus thing as kind of marketing, right? Like, and you guys did something to kind of promote the brand, and now you're moved into offices. You're running this program, which you kind of quickly gave an overview of before. But I love that, right? And I love that you guys did something kind of different and kind of inspiring for other people. So you kind of gave. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a very kind of interesting space at the time because, a lot of incubators and accelerators were popping up, and you'd hear people going, "Oh, not another one. What is this one doing?" And yes, the bus was kind of a little bit of a gimmick in the sense that it made a lot of noise. It got the press. It got people remembering you. I remember getting to events a couple of years ago, and people were like, "Oh, you're the bus guy."
Yeah.
Thankfully now, people remember my name, but it was,
sure.
It was a great start of a conversation when you could then go into, the real value that we were offering. And then we kind of, we figured it out as we went along. We figured out the market. We really focused a lot on doing our research in terms of what people need, where the best kind of help we can provide, and that's how it kind of developed. But it was a really good way of, throwing us into the market, especially as we were quite young.
Sure.
Myself and George, were both sort of 21 and 25, and so when you're in this kind of space, obviously age becomes something that people will look at, and I don't think there was anyone else below the age of 30 running sort of an incubator accelerator at the time. So that was certainly another kind of benefit to it, I think.
Sure. Well, to be honest, that's kind of how I heard about you and reached out to you, right? Is because you guys did something different and unique to kind of get the brand out there and kind of dive into this whole kind of thing. And you're right. I think just kind of being young and whatnot can actually change some things. But I think it kind of validates what you guys are doing when you can kind of get your own kind of name and thing out there. But I do kind of want to dive a bit deeper into the actual program, and you kind of gave a quick overview of what you guys are doing with that, but you kind of want to maybe cover how do people apply, and is there certain industries and stuff that you're looking for?
Yeah, sure. So we actually kind of launched a new program called Momentum.
Okay.
So you can find that through momentumlondon.com.
Okay.
But essentially, it's really focused around growth opportunities for later stage startups. So that is helping. It's all focused only on B2B startups or B2B2C companies that have some traction already. They're selling into small, medium-sized companies. They've got that kind of revenue coming in. They've probably raised a seed round or so. But they're really focused on that kind of making the step up to the next level, and how do they consistently sell to large companies, and how can they then scale within those large enterprises as well. So we're focused on essentially providing a few key things through the program. One is the opportunity to pilot with large enterprise brands.
Okay.
Two, we want to help the startups shorten their sales cycles.
Sure.
We find it really important for them to obviously, if they're working with trying to sell into a large enterprise and it's a really long kind of sales cycle that can really affect their cash flow. So we're kind of focused on ensuring that we can shorten sales cycles for them. And then the next thing is also kind of that exposure to a really high-level network. So a network of C-level executives at large brands, but also really strong investors from sort of angel and VC, and also a strong network of founders that they can grow with as well around them, but also some that have been there and done it before. I think those three things really provide a lot of value in terms of helping a company go from a small company to going and scaling that business and being able to then, if they've got those fundamentals, they can go and take that and replicate that in different kind of locations.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the key thing that we're looking at doing on this program.
Sure. So how do you guys find these companies to kind of partner with? Because are they kind of skeptical at first because maybe they don't want to deploy kind of startup software in their organizations, or kind of walk me through how you guys work with these large enterprises?
Sure. So it's a really good question, actually. I think over the past few years, startups has become this buzzword that all corporates kind of want to work with. And talking to kind of companies is not the biggest kind of problem. We're very good at building a network, and we've done that over a number of years now with large companies. What we've had to do is really find and talk to the companies that we feel are open to working with startups or learning about how to work with startups. And what we found is obviously procurement is not set up to work with startups in a lot of these companies.
Sure.
And our focus is on, for one, helping them better work with startups, but also helping startups understand what they can do to make it easier for the corporates to push through, their technology and their service within their company. Whether it's a certain department or a certain location, or even within the whole company. So we've built a range of kind of companies that we work with, which are very much forward-thinking companies. They're looking to implement new technologies. They understand that these new technologies are coming in, and they want to find their competitive advantage and not be following, others once they've done it.
Sure.
So they are willing to put in the time and investment in terms of mentoring, speaking, and engaging with the startups through a program like ours.
Okay.
But at the same time, it gives startups a real opportunity to go and show how they can massively help large enterprises such as the ones that you'll find on our mentor page. But also they provide a learning process for the employees of the companies we work with,
sure.
the brands. For them, they don't only get the technology, they also get their employees involved, and they get to understand, especially our sponsors get more engagement with the startups, but they get to get their employees understanding why working with startups is of value and how it can help, and ways to improve the process to be able to do that, especially as we start to get senior management buy-in as well.
Sure.
And it's a key part of why we work with, senior members and mentors from these companies, because once they're on board, it's a lot easier to get the rest of the company on board, and understanding what is involved with working with startups. The 3 months is very much focused around ensuring we do get the different stakeholders from within inside large brands involved in the program, and making sure the startups and making sure both sides really understand how to work with each other. And during those 3 months, we can help foster those relationships and see those kind of grow.
Sure. So are you guys reaching out to these companies to get them kind of on board, or are they reaching out to you guys, or a bit of both?
A bit of both.
Okay.
So it probably originally started with mainly us going out to people that we had targeted, that we had seen that we'd find them really useful in the program. As it's grown and we've built our kind of mentor network, through word of mouth mainly and through referrals, we get a lot of kind of inbound as well in terms of companies coming to us, mentors from certain companies coming to us as well. So we have a really good program team that we've hired to be able to, manage that and build those relationships. We take applications every few months as well for mentors from the website, and we promote that out through our networks. So it has become a bit more of a kind of inbound and outbound stuff. But we're always looking to see what's happening as well with companies in the news, and if we see company doing something which we find really interesting, and they have an understanding of startups already through other projects or kind of pilots, then there's certainly ones that we'd be interested in talking to.
Sure. No, that's great. So I'm curious then, you kind of mentioned the program teaches how to shorten the sales cycle with these big enterprises. Can you walk me through kind of what you guys do or teach, or is it a lot of it just because you have this network and you have these kind of enterprise, connections, and those enterprises are kind of working with your startup? Is that kind of how that works, or walk me through kind of shortening that sales cycle?
Yeah. So on the shortened sales cycle part of it, a lot of it is to do with the fact that we can put them straight in touch with the key decision makers.
Sure.
Through the program, we have access to the right people for them to talk to already. But because we've already opened those conversations with them, they trust us, the brands. And what we've done is essentially the due diligence for the brands on the startups.
Okay.
So that helps initially with the shortened sales cycle through the program. But through our masterclasses as well, what we like to have is the key employees who work on procurement side of things within those large brands will also come in and say, here's how our process works from the inside. Here's how you can better navigate that to be really efficient from their perspective. So from the startup side, here's the most efficient they can be, and here's the people they typically would need to speak to, and this is the process they'd go through. And the better they understand that, the better they can prepare for that and know what needs to be done to help speed things through that cycle. So that hopefully not only do they get the shortened sales cycle benefit on our program, but also once they leave our program as well.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So is there kind of specific verticals that you guys prefer to get kind of startups in, or does it really not matter, or does it really reflect kind of the companies that you guys are currently working with or have the ability to work with?
Yeah, so we typically work with sort of companies that you'll see in the FTSE 100 or the FTSE 250.
Okay.
So it's a really wide variety in terms of the brands that we have on board.
Okay.
A lot of them tend to be retail, but it's a lot more widespread than that.
Okay.
Startups we work with, we typically want companies who are either going to be helping create efficiencies or improving security for large enterprises, or they're working on some part of the customer journey and improving that side of it. So whether it's through engagement or experiences or customer loyalty, those side of things. But the main kind of thing that we're looking for is creating that B2B connection there. So making the connections between company which is capable of selling into a large enterprise.
Okay.
Hence companies that have a product or a service already built.
Okay.
Something that can be piloted at even a small level within a large enterprise. And we have consultancy partners who can come in and help the startup scale within a brand as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So are you guys kind of taking people from anywhere on the globe, or just kind of the Europe, or kind of walk me through your geographical kind of, if people apply, do they need to be from a certain geographical region, or does it not matter?
Not specifically, no. So what we do, we typically have a lot of applications from the UK, obviously, because we're based here, and this is where we focus our marketing on. But we do get applications from Europe and the US, and some from Asia as well. Really what we're looking for is they have some sort of operations in the UK. Because
Gotcha.
The brands we're working with, especially the kind of mentors and stuff, are mainly, we do have kind of contacts at their other sites, across the globe. But it's mainly the key decision makers are based in the UK.
Sure.
So they would need to have an employee based here as well to be able to attend sessions.
Right.
And actively looking to kind of expand the revenue which comes from the UK market. So, we can have companies which are maybe expanding into the UK,
sure,
already kind of proven it in maybe another country and expanding into the UK. That's kind of one side where we see things mainly. But other than that, we do a lot of focus in terms of outbound and marketing stuff solely in the UK.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And I could see that if you're in another country and you want to expand into the UK, it makes sense. So I'm curious then, how do you guys monetize what you guys are doing? Because do you have investors? Are you self-funded? Do you take equity? Does it really depend on kind of the startup situation, or kind of how do you guys fund all this?
Sure. So we're not like an accelerator or an incubator or any of those types of models. We're very much focused on, a later stage program, which is a service fee kind of model.
Okay.
So we charge startups a set fee, and then we don't take any equity.
Okay.
Typically at this kind of later stage, we don't want to be taking equity because that can affect their ability to raise investment later. And it's certainly more in terms of valuation. The amount you're taking becomes a larger part of what the company is valued at. So we see the best terms to purely be fee-based per program, so per startup per program, and that so far has got the best response as well from startups. So that helps us cover the cost of the programs. In terms of then looking to continue the growth of that, we also have sponsorship opportunities open for the brands. So if any of the companies want to specifically work in greater detail with the companies, and that means, coming in and saying, here's the problems we have internally, maybe they'll some of the startups may be able to, or may be working on products that can fill those kind of gaps, but those companies can come in and essentially pitch to the startups. They also get the chance to come in and see the progress of the startups on a weekly basis, as well as being able to create sort of outlets where they can test new technology, so in a physical space. So that adds kind of another dimension to what we do. But the way we do it is then that helps us fund growth within the company, and then for the brands which are providing the sponsorship, they get the opportunity to interact with much larger engagement with the technologies that we're kind of bringing onto the program. And essentially staying ahead of the game and everyone else that is in the market.
Sure.
Those are the kind of main ways that we fund Incubus.
Got you.
The events that the bus runs as well is always a nice little sideline, but it's more of a kind of just to top up.
Sure. Well, and you guys work with some like huge brands. Like I'm just kind of even on your mentors page right now, and just for people listening, pretty much Unilever, like eBay, Canon, Domino's, Moo, like all these. Yeah. These are kind of like huge global brands, and you have others. I'm just trying to name a few that I think majority of listeners in kind of North America would have heard of, and then kind of obviously you have some other big brands that are, kind of global as well. But I think that like you guys are working with these huge companies, which is great, right? Especially if maybe there's some people kind of struggling a little bit with how to kind of get involved with these brands. I think what you guys are doing is really awesome in that space, right? And you guys already have these relationships, and you guys have these companies understand that they need to innovate and work with startups, and who knows, they might even acquire the startup at some point, correct? There's
Absolutely,
a chance.
Yeah, so there is, there's lots of opportunities that can come out of it down the line. And I think we kind of looked at the space about sort of a year ago now and thought it's really nice that companies are raising money, and there's loads of things going around about this company's got this amount of funding and more investment is coming into the UK or into Europe and the US and Asia and stuff. But we really wanted to focus and get back down to, the real kind of bottom line of the business and like revenues and cash flow and making sure that companies can survive without having to rely purely on investment to build their business. And I think, we were seeing some companies that we were working with spending 9 months to try raise investment and either raising not enough to get them, more than a year, and they have to go through the whole investment process again, or they were finding that investment suddenly, disappeared after about 8 months because something like, the Brexit referendum or something externally kind of affected it.
Right.
When, that same 9 months they could have put into working with building relationships with large enterprises and selling into businesses and generating revenues that way. So we very much wanted to focus on the sales side of things and kind of a bit on the marketing as well. But, how do you really go and get into those large enterprises? We saw it at Huddle. Huddle was selling into on a freemium model, and there was potential for them to be selling into much larger businesses rather than individuals and smaller businesses. And once that shift was made, you could, rapidly see the kind of growth and the month-on-month kind of revenue would rocket. So we kind of saw that firsthand, and we really wanted to be able to provide something to help people go through that process themselves. It can be very difficult and quite a scary thing to do, and it does take up time and resource, and we can help companies be more efficient at that and really just get those initial steps into these companies. Then that's a good foundation for them to go on and continue doing it themselves. And then that's something we want to promote more within the startup ecosystem in London and wherever we expand to in the future. That focus on revenue and really how do you scale your business, and hopefully that's what we're doing through the program. Ultimately, I think if you go on and you get the likes of Canon or Unilever or eBay as a customer, or all of them, you're much more likely to go on and then go raise investment as well. And,
totally.
You'll have investors coming to you, and you'll probably get better terms as well. So hopefully that's what we're trying to promote, and that's kind of where our passion lies as well. Our passion, our mission from the very beginning has always been to help see more startups survive initially and then go on to thrive. So
sure.
Hopefully this is our way of kind of meeting that mission, let's say.
No, I love that, man. I think that's great. But sadly, we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about Incubus and the actual program itself.
Sure. So if you go to incubuslondon.com, then you can see a bit more about what we do. But if you go to momentumlondon.com, you'll get a lot more around our upcoming programs. From there, you can also apply to a program, or you can apply to mentor. But you can learn about how the program runs as well in terms of the sessions and also ways to keep in contact with us. If you search Momentum London, I think you'll find us on Twitter and LinkedIn as well through that. So that's the best way, really.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time in your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you guys, and have a good rest of your day.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thanks, man. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com. And keep building the future.